Hi folks, Breton here to talk about the 3 pillars of wilderness survival and the 5 C's of your preparedness. Nice to see you today, my friends. So if the 3 pillars of wilderness survival are shelter, fire, and water, then presumably we're going to need some tools to help us achieve those pillars. Now don't get me wrong, there are some folks out there, perhaps even among us, that have the ancestral skills and traditional abilities through experience or through having learned them from other teachers or mentors. But for mere mortals like you and I likely, we're going to need some tools to help us get fire, make shelter, and secure our water. Dave Canterbury is one of the godfathers of bushcraft, has written Bushcraft 101 and several other books on this kind of topic and on survival preparedness. And he's distilled the 5 tools necessary to achieve those pillars of survival down to the 5 C's. And I've got them here. Want to have a look? Okay, overall, before we get started, the 5 C's are: you need a tool that will help you achieve cover, some kind of container, that's a second C, something that'll cut, some kind of cordage, so that's a bit of a new term, a rope or some kind of string, and then finally you need some kind of source of combustion, something to help you get fire. So one more time, we've got cover, contain, cordage, cut, and combustion. Those are the 5 C's. Make sense? Let's have a look at them. My approach to the 5 C's starts with cover. I've got something to help me against the cold, particularly in the wintertime. This is a Mylar blanket or a little sleeping bag called a bivy bag, and a nice big tarp, 12 by 10 feet. So this can protect me from elements like precipitation, particularly in the winter. This will help keep some of the snow off me, and this will hopefully help retain some of my body heat. So this is my approach to cover. Next up, it's a bit of a rogues gallery here of the 5 tools. Next up, I've got a little container. This will hold at least 9 cups, likely 10. Often use it for making coffee, but it's a very good container from a wilderness and survival preparedness perspective. I like how it's got a bail on top, so you can hang it over a fire, like this. And then even if it heats up, you've still got these nice little handles on the side. Something that's made of metal will be ideal. You don't want it melting on your fire if you're trying to purify your water by boiling. Next up, I've got my trusty knife. This lives on my belt. It's 4.5 inches long. Comes in a nice little leather sheath, and I'll show it to you. It's a more or less stout blade. You can see it's full tang. The spine goes all the way through the handle, so I can do a lot of different things with it. I can dig it in and pry with it. I don't keep it crazy sharp, but it's sharp enough to make my work easy so that I don't hurt myself or cut myself. And then whenever I'm not using it, it always goes back in the sheath. Next up, a good hank of cord. In this case, I've got some really sturdy stuff for winter because I find I'm often turning to the rope in my bag to haul sleds or to haul people, little kids, or to climb or to move firewood. So I need some sturdier stuff, but it doesn't have to be that thick. It doesn't have to be as thick as your thumb. It needs to help you building shelters, and it needs to help you dangling things over a fire, in my personal opinion. And then finally, speaking of fire, you should have some way of creating a spark, whether it's a lighter that I'm unfortunately cooling off quite a bit, that I usually keep in my pocket, or whether it's some pretty badass stormproof matches that you keep nicely tucked away in a waterproof case, or some other method, maybe a fire steel or some kind of sparking device. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can bring along some primary combustibles with you, and we'll learn a little bit more about those later. In my case, I've got the handy dandy birch roll. So welcome to Central and Southern Ontario. The birch tree is proof that God wants humans to have fire, a highly combustible bark or skin of the tree that's very common around here in these woods. And if you roll up the bark really nice and tight, fits in your pocket and should provide you with a good fire starter for many fires. And there's lots of other little tips and tricks with dryer lint, etc. that you can just keep in your Ziploc bag and throw in your backpack. So one more time, we've got cover, container, cutting, cordage, and combustion. The 5 C's, according to Dave Canterbury. Now maybe there's some extra C's that you can think of, or maybe just extra things in general. Like for example, you might want something in your bag that can cast a light. That might be a handy thing. So if you can think of any extra tools that you might want to achieve the 3 pillars of wilderness survival, then please feel free to hit this up in the comments, discuss this in the comments. And Dave Canterbury himself has even expanded this list to 10 C's, which we won't get into right now. Now, as an extension activity, and as maybe the main discussion that might be interesting in our industry, is another set of 5, another group of 5 that we often think about as outdoor educators or as business owners, and that's Tuckman's model of the 5 stages of team development. It's not often referred to as Tuckman's model. Usually people like to add the ing words. They say forming, norming, forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning, or mourning, I guess. So there's a lot of ing sounds in these words. What I'd like to challenge you to do is, can you compare the 5 C's of wilderness survival and think about which of these tools, either maybe literally or most likely symbolically, you might need at each of the stages of Tuckman's model. So for example, what metaphorical survival tool might you need during the team forming stage? Or the team storming stage? Maybe you need some cover from the flying objects in your group discussions. What do you need during your team's norming stage, when you're trying to establish boundaries and rules and protocols? It might be helpful to have a container during that time, for example. What about when you're performing, high performing? And then finally, when you're adjourning. So I've thought of this, I've got some ideas myself, but at the end of the day, I think it's about how you think about them and how you explain your rationale that's important. Of course, in this case, there's no right or wrong. It's just a helpful tool for discussion, and so I encourage you to do that. Thank you very much, and nice to see you, my friends.